So tonight we have Ransom Stevens here. We often have people who at Readers Books who write thrillers, and we often have people who write books on science, and we often or sometimes have people who write about God. We don't ever have one that writes about all of them in one, and all rolled up in one. So this is a first for us. And I'm very delighted to hear what he has to say. Well, for coming in, please welcome Ransom to Readers Books.
Thank you very much, Andy. I really appreciate it. I love being here too, and thanks to all of you for coming out. So what I want to do is I'm going to introduce this book to you by reading the beginning and then telling you about different characters. So I'll let them kind of introduce it to you. The constable set the arrest warrant on the counter between them. Ryan, scrambling for something to say, scraped dirty oil from under his thumbnail with a screwdriver. Jail meant he had no other options. It was tempting to relax in this pool of defeat, but no, that was not the man he wanted to be, never again. The constable said, "Don't make sense to me how jailing you helps anybody. If you can't pay your child support, change and all, how are you gonna do it from jail?" "Officer, the judge won't reduce my child support, and there aren't any jobs that pay anything close to what I was making when Linda threw me out." His words flowed together. "I can't come within 100 feet of my son. I want my wife back. I want my family back, but I can't even..." The constable, well over 6 feet tall, had to lean forward on the counter to make his eyes level with Ryan's. And as he did, his eyes narrowed in recognition. "Ryan McNear? Didn't you used to coach Peanut League football?" Yeah." Struggling to recover some poise, Ryan forced himself to speak slowly. "I coached my son's team 2 years ago, the Shorthorns." He licked his lips into a smile. Framed by his chisel-cut jaw, and in the light of blue eyes and auburn wire-brush hair, his smile looked calm and warm, and sometimes it was, but not now. Ryan's wet-lipped grin was his response to stress. As a boy, he used that smile to soften arguments between his sisters. In school, it broke up fights. In business, it brought opposing sides together. It gave the appearance that he saw humor in the situation, that he couldn't be rattled, and in so doing, it disarmed conflict. Pretending to look down at the counter, he stole a glance at the name tag above the constable's badge. Holcomb? Bill Holcomb? And as he spoke the name, he remembered. "Your son, Willie, right? Didn't he get hurt in our first game?" "Yes, sir, he did." Ryan leaned back on his heels and set the screwdriver next to the cash register. Along with his smile, the movement gave the illusion of confidence. But the memory of Willie Holcomb screaming in pain felt like another count against him. "After the cast come off, my boy wanted nothing to do with football," Holcomb said. "Nothing I could say would get him back on the field until you called. I don't know what you said, but he's turning into quite a linebacker." He squinted at Ryan's name tag. "Assistant manager? I thought you were an engineer. What happened?" Ryan shut the door to the garage, directed Holcomb to the waiting room, sat next to him, and told the story. Not the complete story, that would have sent him straight to jail. But he couldn't have described all his failures in 10 minutes anyway. Holcomb nodded occasionally and barely blinked. Ryan finished with the words he'd said to a judge 6 months ago. They hadn't helped then. "I made plenty of mistakes, but all I can do is keep trying to fix them. And I'm here to arrest you." Holcomb, with his elbows on his knees, rested his face in his hands and started speaking. He didn't stop for 15 minutes. He talked about what it takes to break a man. Maybe he'd seen it in his job. But it looked to Ryan as though he had walked close to the line himself. As he spoke, he looked out the window past the cars waiting to have their oil changed, at the used car lots down the street, and by the time he focused on the tired cinder block saloon next door. He was talking about his wife and children and how the smallest decisions can destroy the greatest dreams. Finally, he looked at Ryan. Sometimes it just don't seem like justice is very just. He stood, handed Ryan the arrest warrant, and ran his hand along his belt, over his sidearm, past the radio module. "I have to cuff you," he said, and stared deep into Ryan's eyes. Ryan's smile disappeared. "You see, I have to handcuff you," Holcomb continued. "But dang, if I didn't leave my cuffs out in the cruiser, I'll have to go back out and get them, and before I come back in, I think I'll call my wife. What you're going through scares hell out of me, and I'd like to get a little distracted and want to hear my wife say she loves me." He tipped his hat to Ryan, turned, and headed toward the door. Chapter 2. Driving away from everything you love is hard. Driving away in a Ford Probe with over 200,000 miles on it is almost impossible. So Ryan's basically a character, and here he is standing on the abyss, looking out, going, "What the hell have I done, and how do I fix it?" And looking back at him is sort of the answer. And this cover art's kind of interesting. This is a picture of a 19-year-old girl from Norway, and she looks dead on like the character Katarina in this book. And in order to get permission to use this picture, all she wanted was a copy of the book.